Okay, but do I look like a little sailor? Am I Popeye the Sailor Man?
Bibliosophie.
This morning I was complaining to myself, i.e. to my morning pages, that I have amassed far too many books in my living room in piles and that I needed to put them away. In the process of putting them away, I decided I may as well talk to you about it. Hello, hi, I'm Sophie. Welcome or welcome back to this channel. Let's talk about books that are currently in my life, books I've been reading, books I plan to read soon, books I've been borrowing, and books I've been buying. Well, immediately I'm turning on a lamp because it is only early mid-afternoon, but it is very bleak outside, and I just don't think I have enough light. That's fine. First pile is pile of finished books. The first two are actually not books I finished this year so far. I finished them last year. They are the same book twice, An Apprenticeship by Clarice Lispector. I have mentioned it before. I mention it again because I have finally written my reading notes, or at least a first volume of reading notes about this book for my Substack, for my book club Substack. So go check those out if you are interested. I'm glad to finally have written about this book after so many months. First up in books that I have finished since the beginning of the year, and these are not actually in the order in which I've finished them, but whatever, is Olivia Sudjic, Exposure. This is just a long essay, very short book that I've been meaning to get to for a while. It is about Sudjic's difficulty with being seen and exposed as she is trying to write. To a certain extent, I think it is about writer's block, but more so about the block of being a writer and of being perceived in that act as she is trying to perceive the world and turn it into something, and specifically a female writer. This dovetails really nicely into an essay about what it means to be a female writer at large and how we perceive books by female authors, how we perceive their act of working and the finished product of their work, how we so often do not allow literature by women to be anything other than women's literature. I'll share one quotation. I'm using my little tabs if you're keeping track. Barely, but I am, which I think sums up things nicely. To many readers, excuse me. To many readers, the author was the passive vessel for a story which happened to her, not an author which happened to the story. I think that captures things quite nicely. I read The Undying by Anne Boyer. I have mentioned wanting to read this book in my previous video. This fulfills my prompt for Ben Reads Good challenge for 2024. The January prompt is a book written by an Anne, and so I figured I would probably read this for that. However, I also wanted to read this book because I like Anne Boyer's writing, and I was really keen to read her breast cancer memoir. I was also ambivalent to a certain extent, or actually more accurately, afraid of reading it because it's difficult to read about other people's illness, and it's when you're going through your own. I have thoughts on that I may or may not turn into another Substack post at some point in the future. So we'll see if I have the courage to actually turn my notes on that into something for the public. The subtitle of the book is Pain, Vulnerability, Mortality, Medicine, Art, Time, Dreams, Data, Exhaustion, Cancer, and Care. And that is quite a mouthful, and it's also an accurate representation of what this book is. It's a very angry book. It's a very personal book. It is in many ways kind of an anti-cancer memoir. It is very much about her experience, but it's also her desire not to enter into the kind of trite, inspirational cancer memoir pile of books that exist on the market. It's very much also an analysis of breast cancer specifically as a cultural thing, entity, through the works, lives, and writings of people like Audre Lorde, Susan Sontag, Kathy Acker, who are very, very famous women who are writers who had breast cancer and died of it. So it's a cultural memoir as well, and it is an investigation of collectivity, of collective experience, of cancer as a corporate entity and cancer care as very much this corporate capitalist thing. It was in some ways, some personal ways, a difficult read because there are some things that are just not my experience, I'm happy to say, but definitely one I recommend. I'm very glad I got into this finally. Also, another book I'm glad I finally read after having it on my vague TBR, maybe my actual TBR for a while, is The Dead Avocado by Elaine Dundy. I think it was Noor who listed this as one of her favorite reads of 2024, and it put this back into the forefront of my brain. Several other people have talked about it on their channels. I have been meaning to read this for a while, and it was a delight. I really liked it. This follows a young American woman, she's 21, living in Paris in the 50s, and very carefree in so many ways. She is kind of this hapless delight of a protagonist and narrator, but there's more to it than that. There is a lot of just kind of running around and meeting people, but it's done really well in a way that, yeah, I had a great time with. So I'm glad I finally got to it. I also have tabs in this. Do I have tabs that I want to share with you? No. The writing is really funny and witty and delightful. I read just yesterday Marigold and Rose by Louise Glück, I believe is how she would pronounce her name. This fulfills another reading challenge prompt. I also mentioned in my 2025 intentions video that I probably didn't have it in me to do more than one challenge, and so was not going to attempt to fulfill the prompts given to us by the Savages, but I looked at those prompts and I liked them. The one for January is a book about twins, and somebody had listed this extremely short novel, and I thought, you know what? I could do this. I got it up from the library, and I had a delight with it, actually. This is a slim little thing, literally and also figuratively, but it's sweet and kind of reflective. This follows two twin very, very young children, and it's really kind of a portrait of their family. They share a family because they're twins. It's not really more than that. It's a very fast read. It's 50 pages. It's poetic, as you might expect from Louise Glück, and it was a nice kind of, I don't know, like 45 minutes of reflective reading for me yesterday. I finally read, there are a lot of finally reads at the beginning of January. I finally read Iris Murdoch's Under the Net. This was the Katie James Book Club pick for December, I guess. I read it late, but I finally read it. This has been on my list for a long time. It was fine. I had such a hard time getting into it, and then it felt kind of punishing to continue it. I almost stopped reading it because I was not really enjoying it, and it felt stupid to read a book like this and not enjoy it. But I just couldn't quite get into it. This follows another hapless, young-ish person who kind of has the world at his fingertips. Jake Donahue is a writer from what I can tell, like his early mid-30s. And he's going around London. He is being kicked out of his living arrangement. He is a mooch, and that kind of sets off a series of adventures in which he meets up with people from his past and present. It's, to a certain extent, a philosophical work. Iris Murdoch was also a philosopher in addition to a novelist, and so it goes into some philosophy. Under the Net is a Wittgenstein reference, and that's kind of woven in and out of this book. The knowability of others, the possibility of connecting to others and communicating with others. The best thing that I can think about this book, the most positive that I can be about this book, is thinking of this series of misadventures and our protagonist's kind of inability to connect to people and understand what's going on as an illustration of Murdoch's thesis of the difficulty of connecting to people. But I just had a difficulty with our protagonist, I think. This is in many ways a very delightful book, a very entertaining book. It's written well. And so it's not dissimilar to the Dead Avocado, and yet that one connected nicely with me, and this one I just had a difficult time dealing with. It was the first book that I started in the new year. I was also just freshly out of the hospital, so maybe my state of mind was just not there. Who can say, right? You're always going to bring yourself to a book. I'm glad I did read it. I'm glad I finally read it. I'm glad I finished it, but it just didn't quite congeal into something that I actually took that much delight in. Books I'm currently reading or want to get to quite soon. Maupassant. I'm still reading the short stories and novellas of Maupassant. I mentioned him last year, and you will have seen me log some various Maupassant previously. I'm teaching through the stories, so that's just kind of in permanent residence on my table. Similarly, I don't even know why this made it into the stacks, but whatever, it's fine. Mallarmé, la musique et Mallarmé. This is a series of essays on Mallarmé, the poet, Mallarmé, and music and Mallarmé. This is for my dissertation research. Yeah, that's kind of not what this channel is about. 3 Talks by Brenda, Hillman. I discovered this book thanks to The Only Real Property, who made a video about it. And while I was watching her, I thought, oh, okay, I must check this little book out, and I immediately ordered it. This is 3 talks on poetry and poetic devices, and I'm enjoying it. It's great. It's a book about writing, and specifically writing poetry. I'm sold. I love it. Just this morning, I started We Do Not Part by Hong Kong. This is my first Hong Kong book. I have mentioned that I wanted to finally read her. I have been given recommendations on which books of hers to start with, and this is not it, but this is what I have. Hogarth sent me an arc of this book. It comes out properly in, as of my recording this, 2 days. So probably while you're watching it, it is either going to be out tomorrow or it has just come out. I have only read 15 pages of it, so I don't have much to say about it yet, but I liked the first scene of it. I like the writing and translation of it, so I'm excited to finally read her. La voix du fleuve by Mireille Gansel. This is a poetry collection. If I'm to be honest, it's not hitting me all that much. There are some things that I like about it, but I'm kind of dipping in and out of it. That's kind of funny because it's called The Voice of the River. There are some beautiful phrases, there are some interesting references that make me think, but it's not, it hasn't grabbed me. And so that's fine. More poetry. I've been reading Cavafy. I had already read some of his poetry and liked it, and I finally bought his collected poems, and I've been also dipping into those, but with more relish. I tend to read some of his poetry in the morning, and yeah, it's been lovely to. I don't know if I will finish this book this month or maybe ever in a kind of linear way, but so far I've been reading it in a linear way and really enjoying doing so. Probably the next or one of the next nonfiction books that I want to read is Bibliophobia by Sarah Chihaya. This was sent to me a couple of months ago by Random House. It comes out at the beginning of next month, and it's a memoir about reading and about books, and so come on. That is so very much up my alley. I think I will like it, and I should read it soon. I Was Sent by a Friend Wintering by Catherine May. I've seen various people talk about this book in the past few years, and I'm interested. This is very much a sicko book, or a book sent to me because I am sick. The power of rest and retreat in difficult times. I'm curious, so I will try to read it pretty soon, I think. Similarly, also sent to me by a friend from my TBR is The End of the Novel of Love by Vivian Gornick. This is about love novels. I think especially kind of the love novels of the type of from the 19th century. And that's kind of all I know about it, but I'm intrigued by, again, it's a book about books, so I love it. And finally, Good Girl by Aria Aber. This was sent to me by Hogarth. It just came out at the beginning of this week. It is a novel that interests me. In Berlin's artistic underground, where techno and drugs fill warehouses still pockmarked from the wars of the 20th century, 19-year-old Nila at last finds her tribe. Born in Germany to Afghan parents, raised in public housing graffitied with swastikas, drawn to philosophy, photography, and sex, Nila has spent her adolescence disappointing her family while searching for her voice as a young woman and artist. Books I currently have out from the library. Philip K. Dick. I've said previously on this channel that even though I don't read very much sci-fi, I do like sci-fi and some genre fiction. I want to read The Man on the High Castle. There are 4 novels in this collection, including Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep and Ubik, both of which I have read, but I don't know, a week or 2 ago, got into my head that I wanted to read The Man on the High Castle, so I got it out of the library. Love's Work by Gillian Rose. This was recommended to me on one of my previous videos by somebody, and I couldn't find the comment, so I'm sorry. I can't remember who recommended it, and I couldn't figure out where the comment was. But this is another kind of exploration of sickness and life and kind of recuperation. Love's Work is at once a memoir and a work of philosophy. Written by the English philosopher Gillian Rose as she was dying of cancer, it is a book about both the fallibility and endurance of love that becomes real and lasting through an ongoing reckoning with its own limitations. I think this will also be a very soon nonfiction read for me. Percival Everett, Sonnets for a Missing Key, and some others. This is, from what I can tell, a poetry collection, which I actually had no idea about. Cat's Field Notes recommended this book to me last week, I think, and so I put it in my library requests. It came in yesterday, I picked it up, and I look forward to reading it soon. Keeping an Eye Open, Essays on Art by Julian Barnes. I actually requested this quite a while ago. This is Essays on Art by Julian Barnes. That's kind of all I can tell you about it. I don't know if it specializes in any particular art, but much like I like books about books and books about writing, I also like books about visual art. So I'm intrigued by this one. This is another New Directions picture book, not picture book, but not chapter book, short book, whatever, what's the word? 3 Streets by Yoko Tawada is 3 short stories about streets. I have had this out from the library actually for a little while, and I should finally get to it or return it. I think the next week or 2, let's say until the end of January, is when I have to either read it or decide that I'm not reading it in this time period. And similarly, Laszlo Krasznahorkai, Chasing Homer, is quite beautiful. It has, visually, I mean, I have not started reading it at all, but in addition to text, it has kind of beautiful pictures. Who doesn't love a book with pictures? And I've had this out also from the library for a while, and I should decide, I think, this month to either read it or not read it. So I'm talking about it now. And lastly, we've got books that I have purchased for myself. This is my little book haul. Eileen Myles, For Now. This is a very short book about writing. Can you sense a theme? I actually bought this at the end of 2024, but I'd like to read it very soon. So that's why I'm talking about it here, and also because I still haven't put it away since buying it in, I believe, early December. So this should be another nonfiction that I want to read kind of as soon as possible. Edith Wharton. I mentioned wanting to read The House of Mirth in my 2025 intentions video, and here we have it. This is actually 3 novels of old New York, but including The House of Mirth. So I'll get to this one probably in February, I think. A Jar of Wildflowers, Essays in Celebration of John Berger. I was at a used bookstore that I like a lot, and I bought this chunky guy, and I saw this chunky guy, and this was very much a snap decision. But I like John Berger, so maybe I like Essays in Celebration of him. I suspect this will be very much about art and writing and seeing the world and having a relationship to the world. But I don't know. This was a little bit of a just sort of, ooh, okay, why not? 2 Clarice Lispectors, which I mentioned in my 2025 video. I guess this is sort of the sequel to that video. The Apple in the Dark and The Chandelier. These are the last 2 novels by Lispector, which I have not read. I mentioned that I also have The Chandelier in French. I don't have this in any other version, but this year, conceivably, I'm reading these. So this is not going to be super soon, but I do now own them. And similarly, 3 more Toni Morrison. It's 3 of the 4 remaining Toni Morrisons that I have not read. Paradise is the next book of hers that I plan to read. I would like to read it this month or at the beginning of February. Home and A Mercy. The only book that I have left to obtain, or either by purchasing it or borrowing it, of hers is God Bless the Child. I forgot what God is doing to the child. I'll put it in the show notes. That's it. Those are the piles of books that have been piling up in my living room. I'm going to put some of those away now. I'm also going to keep some of them out and about because I need them for my daily life still. But right now, I am actually going to put away some of these books. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video. Bye.